pray and introduce our speaker. Next week, Sandy Mortensen from Bloomington Schools will be here to talk about schools and school safety and so on. So please join us for that. I know Sunday school is over today, but her schedule allowed her to come next week, so I hope you can stay on after worship. The Lord be with you. Let us pray. Gracious God, for your people gathered in this place, for all the ways that you work in their lives, we give you thanks. Guide Adam and guide all of us in this discussion, that your church may be built up, your people may be encouraged, and you may give us further direction and spirit to love the world that you so love. In your Son, Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Of course, Luther believed and talked about the priesthood of all believers. That means they're just not single priests like us here, professional people. But as I mentioned a couple weeks ago, the priesthood of all believers means, in large part, we are priests for one another. And there are so many of you who in your work, your daily lives, are priests to other people. And today I can think of no one who does that better than Adam Tschida and all his work as a police officer. Angela's the same thing. They are living out the priesthood of all believers in some wonderful, wonderful ways. So, without further ado, let us welcome Adam Tschida.
Well, thank you. That was some very kind words, Pastor Mark. And good morning and happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. Grab my clicker. Okay, so we're going to spend about the next, 45, 50 minutes, something like that, talking about safety in our communities. This will be broken down kind of in two halves. One half, we're going to talk about what is kind of going on in our communities, what we're seeing as far as crime rate, property crime, violent crime, that sort of thing. Both what we're seeing, what we're seeing, and what the numbers, the stats, the data actually show. And then the second half of the conversation will be it's like safety. How to keep yourself safe at home, or to protect your property, how to watch out for scams that are out there, and then personal safety. How to make yourself a more difficult victim when you're heading downtown for dinner or running to the mall to pick up a birthday present for your nephew or something like that. All right, so there's all kinds of familiar faces here, but I'm going to introduce myself anyways. My name is Adam Tschida. My wife Angela and I have been members of Peace, I think, since about 2009. Our daughter Addison is somewhere here taking one last crack at the Sunday school teachers, giving them a hard time. And then my wife Angela and our son Wyatt is actually home. Wyatt's sick this morning, so for Mother's Day, she is hanging out in a bathrobe, drinking coffee, taking care of Wyatt. I work for the Apple Valley Police Department. I have been with Apple Valley, it'll be 18 years in September. 16 of those years I spent on patrol. So either as a patrol officer or then supervising a patrol shift. In August of 21, I was selected to start supervising our community impact unit. So right now I supervise our crime prevention folks, our school resource officers, our behavioral health and co-responder program. So a police officer and a mental health professional pair up, hop in a car, and go out and help someone in mental health crisis or help hook them up with resources that they're maybe having a difficult time getting connected with. In addition to that, that's kind of the big part of my job. I have also been part of our SWAT team for the last 13 years. In the spring, the early spring of 2020, I was promoted to the role of commander on that team, so I've been doing that for the last 3 years. Okay, so what are our objectives. What are we gonna try to accomplish here over the next hour or so? It's really twofold, and I hit on them on the first slide. The first thing is evaluate what we're seeing or what media is portraying as far as what's happening with crime in our communities, and then compare that with the data and just to see how those two things line up. And then the second main objective is to try to just talk through some tips on being safer with the theme of just making yourself be a more difficult victim, whether you're at home, whether you're online, whether you're walking down the street. Okay, so I went, in preparation for doing this today, I went online and just did a couple of keyword, Google searches, and it took me a very short amount of time to find these headlines, right? This is what we're seeing on a pretty regular basis, right? You go to care11.com or you pick up the Star Tribune, and on that first page, these are the stories we're seeing, right? Shooting in St. Paul, a carjacking in North Minneapolis, that sort of thing. And before I get into the numbers, into the data, just by a quick show of hands, I'm gonna use like 2019 as a baseline because that's the numbers I pulled, and also that is kind of a baseline for the last 4 years, right? 2019 was normal, right? And then 2020 changed our world, and we're still kind of in that post-COVID sort of world. So by a show of hands, just with the eyeball test, living your life, looking out your living room window, looking at mainstream media, social media. Hello? Okay. How many of you think crime is up today from what it was 2019? That's, almost everybody, vast majority of you. Okay, a little bit different question, but kind of along the same lines. How many of you think that the crime rates now are like unprecedented, reaching like all-time highs based on what you're seeing in your community, seeing in the news, seeing on social media, that sort of thing? Show of hands, do you think we're kind of, a bunch of you feel that as well. Okay, we're gonna actually get into the numbers. All right, so I'm gonna throw up a couple of graphs for you, and really actually what the stat is, what it is down here, and the numbers aren't important. It's gonna be the trend that I wanna show you. Before I actually start talking about these, I want to call your attention to the Bloomington, all these stats are Bloomington stats. They're right from Bloomington Police Department, right from their dashboard. And I wanted to call your attention to their website, and actually the Bloomington Police Department just in general. You guys, for those of you that live in Bloomington Police Department is a very squared away organization. They do a very good job. Their new chief is doing an excellent job. There's some other leadership in that department that are doing really good work. Their website has a lot of good information on it. I was able to pull all these numbers right from their website. There's a dashboard where they keep pretty up-to-date numbers on what's going on in your communities. The other thing that Bloomington, I think, does really well, and you'll see some of it towards the end of the presentation when we talk about tips for staying safe, they have a ton of them on their website. From making sure your kid's bike doesn't get stolen, to safety while babysitting, to cyber safety. So if you are interested in that sort of thing, Bloomington does a really nice job. Okay, getting to the numbers. So I pulled four years, 2019, 20, 21, and 22. There are a couple of anomalies in here, and I think it had something to do with the way they coded some of their stats. Like this first one is theft from vehicle. There's no 2019, there was no numbers in it. But I'm gonna move through these graphs, and what I want you guys to see is, and a pattern will develop. So from 2019 to 2020 was a fairly significant increase. From 2020 to 2021 was even more significant, an increase in crime rate. From 21 into 22 was a slight decrease, And then, 23, the numbers aren't in yet. We're only, a handful of months into 23, but that decrease is continuing. And I think it will probably hold true through the rest of the year. We are going down slightly. It's not that upward curve. It's not, the drop isn't as dramatic as it was in reverse in 2021, but it is going down a little bit. So from left to right, this is just theft from vehicles. Your car's in your driveway, something gets stolen out of it. Here's a burglary, calls in Bloomington, vandalism, theft from motor vehicle. Now, those are property crimes. These are crimes actually against a person. So your assaults, kind of this same sort of, this is the pattern that we've really seen in Bloomington, in the metro, not even across the country. This sort of curve like this. That's homicide, weapons offenses, and then robbery. So this is really what is kind of happening. And so why did this happen over the last 4 years? And crime rates are super complicated. Last week you had Rick Kaufman in here talk about active shooter and violence in schools, and I listened back to his presentation, and he talked about how complicated that issue is, how many different factors play into it. Well, this crime rates are that and more, right? All kinds of factors play into it. But at its core, I think over the past 4 years, I can kind of point. This is my words. This is my thoughts. But I think this is pretty accurate. We as a civilized society, as a community that all lives together, works together, depends on one another, we sign up for a contract, right? And it's not a contract that is it has never been reviewed by an attorney. It's never been notarized. You guys have never actually put pen to paper, but it's there. It's a social contract that we all agree to by living in a community together. We're gonna respect one another. We're gonna respect each other's property. We're gonna follow by a set of rules, right? Some of those rules are written down and formalized in laws. Some of them are just kind of accepted norms of the way our communities work. By being part of that community, by signing on to that contract, we also agree that if you veer off or you break those rules, there's consequences. And they can vary from a sideways look from your neighbor to getting in trouble with your parents or your school to being placed under arrest and spending time in jail or having to go and talk to a judge in a courtroom. And what has happened is that contract has broken down over the last handful of years. The agreement amongst all the groups in our communities are not, it's eroded a little bit. And I think the underlying factor to it, so if you walk up to the social contract and you kick away the dirt, you take your shovel and you scrape away the lawn clippings from the foundation of that contract, what it rests on, the building blocks of that contract is trust, right? The whole thing is built on trust. And what has happened over the last 4 years is the trust in our world has eroded a lot. The right doesn't trust the left doesn't trust the right. People don't trust the government, and the government's skeptical of the people. Teachers and parents question, and trust is broken down with school boards and their administrators. The same thing is true for law enforcement. And I think all the other factors, police departments being short on hand, a criminal justice system that needs some improvement, more mental health resources, both in the criminal justice system, in our communities, and in our schools. All that stuff, you can add all that stuff, that's gonna help. But until we kind of repair the foundation, until we establish a little bit more trust in our communities, this contract it doesn't work. And so that's kind of where we're at right now. And I think And that doesn't come back real quick, right? It can go away real quick. It did over the last 3 years. But it's gonna take some time to build that back up. And I think that's why we've seen what we've seen. Kind of that baseline 2020 into 21 or 20, 21, and then maybe we're on a good path now. I think we are. I think it's getting a little better. So with that, so our friend Chicken Little here, is the sky falling? How bad is it out there? What is reality? And so this is what reality is. This is, the top line is the United States, the bottom gray line is Minnesota. And this is stats from the FBI. They compile statistics from across the country. It's called the Uniform Crime Report. They pick out different crimes and they graph them all out. And so, and I went back 30 years, so a little over that. So the far left side of the graph is 1990, the far right is 2021. That was their newest stats, or for actually it says 20 up there. I don't know if they had 20 stats. It doesn't matter. My point is that for those of you that thought crime is up, and you raise your hand, crime is up, absolutely. Crime is up the last 4 years. Are we in never seen before, DEFCON 5, the sky is falling according to Chicken Little time? No, we're not. If you look back, across the country, crime rates were way higher in the mid-90s. And even in Minnesota, they were a little bit higher than where we're at now. I think one of the reasons why it seems maybe worse than it is the perception is worse than it is that today, the way news is broadcast, the way we get it, compared to the way it was in the mid-90s and through the 2000s, is so much different. Back in the mid-90s, when the crime rate was very, very high, you could get your news from 4 different channels, right? If you watch Channel 4, Channel 11, Channel 5, that sort of thing. And you had to watch the news at a certain time or else you didn't get the news. Social media wasn't a thing. 24-hour news coverage wasn't a thing. And so now any crime that happens is pushed out and made into headlines. The other thing that I think has changed our perception a little bit is that everybody now has a camera in their pocket. And everything that happens in our world is documented via video, right? And those videos are shared. Everything that a police officer does now is captured on a body-worn camera. And so it is, and for just the perception that, what we're seeing, it is different to read a headline than to watch a video, right? The video hits so much more close to home. It's so much more personal when you hear a voice, see a face, that sort of thing. And so I think that is one of the reasons why, how many people think the crime rate is to the point where it's never been before. We're more violent now than we've ever been. Well, yeah, okay, I think that's one of the reasons why that perception is what it is. It's in our face all the time. So my point is, and to wrap this up before we move into some of the safety conversation, is that crime is up, undoubtedly. It is. Over the last 4 years, crime has gone up across the board. It doesn't really matter what type of crime it is. Property crime, persons crimes, violent crime, it's up. Is it worst ever? Are we, as society, degrading to a point where, we just lost all faith in our ability to live with one another, and it's dangerous to walk to the end of your driveway and get the mail? No, it's not. We've been here before. We've been even in far worse positions than this before. If we can start working on that trust piece and start kind of reestablishing that contract, we'll be in a lot better shape. And I think, 21 to 22 went down a little bit. I think 23 is gonna go down a little bit more. A lot of the stuff that I talked about, the police officers, the mental health support, the other resources, I think and I hope we're starting to figure some of that stuff out. It's not fast, but I think we're there.
Hey, Adam, just
Yeah.
a quick question. Inferring from, the 1990s, there was quite a gap between Minnesota and the country. And that gap is, I mean, we're pretty much mainline with the rest of the country now. Any contributing factors or guesses about why that disparity has kind of?
Yeah, I think in the 1990s, a huge part of the very, very high crime rate across the country, it was offset by extremely high rate of crime in the major cities. Yeah, I think New York, Chicago, Detroit, I think those were rough places to be 30 years ago. And I think that the gap was like this back then, and now it's kind of come back down a little bit. We're more closer to the national average. It's not that we got a lot worse, it's just that some of those major cities are better.
How did they get there?
Well, in some of the cities, and you saw, and you've seen over the number of years, a lot of the laws that were put in place to clean up those cities are being repealed because they were very aggressive, and that's kind of the balance with our society, right? Rick Kaufman talked about it last week. To increase safety to a certain level, you give up some autonomy and some freedom, okay? And so a lot of the policies that were put in place in those major cities where they really cracked down on crime, they were stopping everybody, and all kinds of people went to jail. And it swung so far that now in reflecting on that, it probably wasn't maybe too far that direction. So it's a balance. It's like he was talking about last week with school safety. Well, where is the balance? You turn a school into a fortress. Well, maybe it's a little safer, but what type of environment is that for learning, right? You turn your city into a police state where you have checkpoints and every third person on the street gets patted down and taken to jail if they violate the law. Well, you probably lower the crime rate, or you take those folks off the street, but who wants to live in a world like that, right?
Thank you.
Yeah. And if you guys have any questions too, I should have mentioned that to start with. This is a lot more fun having offshoot conversations like this than me just talking at you for an hour. Okay, anything more on the stats piece? We're gonna shift gears. Yeah.
I was going to kind of piggyback off of that. I think and maybe there's this local perception. I was like, we look at that big scale. The national average looks like the spike up. Still, it's at about like the lower 25th percentile back to the 90s, and it looks like the spike in Minnesota puts it back up to like we're back at like the top 75th percentile of that span. So that feel locally of whether or not it was the larger cities and whatnot. Maybe Minneapolis is being a little more, or the local cities. It's so that trend upward is closer to where we were at its worst than the national average. So that's maybe where there's a little bit of that.
Yeah, I think so. I think the perception here is closer to the reality here, if that makes sense. The spike for Minnesota is higher than the national average, and we are closer to where we were in the 1990s than the rest of the country. And I think that is Minneapolis has been kind of the epicenter of some very large scale events that have eroded trust in our communities over the last couple of years. We were the center of the universe the last week of May in 2020. The entire world knew about Minneapolis, and then what happened after that. And then a couple other events since then. And I think that has played into it. I think that's why Minneapolis, the spike is like this a little bit, and the rest of the country is not quite as severe. Yep. Okay, so what now? So let's talk about safety. I'm gonna break this down into 3 categories. The first will be stuff to do around home, Then we're gonna talk about scams a little bit, online, on the phone, in person. And then we'll wrap up by talking about personal safety when you're out and about. And I also wanna mention, when I get into this, everything I'm gonna talk about, I doubt that it's gonna just blow you away or knock your socks off. This is very common sense stuff, and it's very easy to do. And I bring it up here because it works. There are all kinds of other things out there that are more elaborate, maybe more complicated, but this is stuff that you actually can do. You can incorporate it into your life, and it does make you out to be a tougher victim. It does keep you a little safer, keep your property a little safer. Okay, so how do you stay safe at home? This is going to be a theme throughout the next number of slides. So how do you stay safe at home? Don't be an easy victim. In all of this stuff, make yourself out to be a more difficult victim. Criminals look for an easy road, an easy victim, right? Make yourself into be a difficult one. And so just going kind of down the row here, like I said, none of this is gonna come as a surprise to you, but what maybe would be a surprise to you is how many times as a police officer, we get called to a theft or a burglary or something like that, and the reason that it happened was these couple of things, okay? So when you're home, make sure your doors are locked up. At night, take a spin around your house, make sure your garage doors are down, make sure the service door into your garage is locked up. Lock your vehicles in your driveway. Here, again, like that's such common sense, but so often a theft from vehicle in a driveway happens because the vehicle was unlocked, right? Something that might not, excuse me, something that might not be as common sense or you might not have thought of before is the idea of not keeping your garage door opener in any vehicles that are parked in your driveway. And the reason is, the reason's obvious, but I'll point it out anyways. If you have your garage door in your car in the driveway, and if you accidentally leave that unlocked, or say someone even breaks into it, they now have access to your house, right? So if you park a vehicle in your driveway, use the punch code or whatever to get into your garage. Don't leave those garage door openers in those vehicles. A couple points on just your property. So exterior lighting is a good thing. If you have lights that light up your driveway area, or motion lights for your back deck, that does deter criminals. Kids walking through a neighborhood pulling on car doors, if they walk into your driveway and all of a sudden it is lit up like Target Field on a Friday night, they will move on, okay? Having your address visible, in the event that you do need to call for emergency services for some reason, law enforcement, fire, ambulance, whatever, it makes it so much easier and so much quicker to find you if you can really see your address, so have that visible. There are plenty of homes out there where bushes have maybe grown up or a couple numbers have fallen off the garage or something that makes it pretty difficult to come and help you if you can't find you. And then the last two up here are together. I remember seeing Mark Kaufman's presentation last week. He also hit on this. I'm going to hit on it here. I'm going to hit on it again in each of the next sections. Trust your instincts and just be aware of what's going on around you. You all, go ahead.
Finish.
Okay. You all are experts in what is normal in your world, in your community, in your neighborhood, the normal traffic on your block, the ebb and flow of your neighborhood. You see it every day, and whether you realize it or not, you are really good at picking out something that doesn't feel right or doesn't feel normal. Trust that. If you see something and you're like, man, there's just something off on that, about that vehicle, about that guy, about that group of kids, about whatever it is, don't discount it, and don't feel ashamed for thinking that way. If something doesn't seem right, it's because it's not right. Like, you spend your entire life looking at, like I just said a minute ago, kind of the ebb and flow and the rhythm of the world. You're really good at picking out stuff that's not normal. Yeah.
Be a little careful with the exterior lighting. I'm on a homeowners association board, and every once in a while, somebody puts up a bright light with a motion detector, and the deer walks by or something like that, and it's shining in somebody else's bedroom. So make sure the light's focused on your property,
Right.
you know, and talk to your neighbors about it.
It will take a little, that is a good point, because you might have the most safe, like this quadrant is the most safe quadrant in the entire Bloomington world, and you will not have any neighbors that like you, because your light is shining, it's like they're next to a runway or something. So, both with lighting and, like cameras, you can't just set them up. It's not like a set it and forget it sort of thing. It takes a little bit to get them set up to, especially if you're using motion activation on them, to adjust the motion so that like your camera is tripped when someone's walking up your driveway or up your sidewalk, and not every time a kid bikes down the block, you know, way away from your house. So that's a good tip. Set them up, but then you're gonna have to make some adjustments. The last thing I wanna mention about safety at home, actually before I get here, any questions on that stuff? None of it is, like I said, none of it's super complicated, but the reason it's up there is because it works. It's low-hanging fruit stuff. Like, it's easy to do, and it makes your property flyover country for criminals, right? You're not an easy target. Yeah, Jeremy?
So I don't know if you see something that's irregular in your neighborhood and you want to trust your instincts, should you call 911 or a non-emergency line? Or
Yeah, that's a good question. So what has happened over the last bunch of years is that the non-emergency numbers for your local police departments, for fire departments, for ambulance services have all been rerouted to the same place as 911. They are handled in the same manner, and they are pipelined through the same set of dispatchers. So at one time, like when everybody in this room was a kid, we were told 911 was for emergencies only. Stay off that line. That line is so someone can get through when they have a real emergency. Don't dial it, you know, unless you have one. Now, dial 911 for everything, because it doesn't matter. If you can hunt through and Google non-emergency number for Bloomington, and it is going to route you to the same dispatcher as it was as if you dial 911. So, yep. So, if you see something suspicious, yeah, call. We get calls for suspicious vehicle, suspicious person, suspicious package, something, you know, whatever, all the time. It is such a common, many times it turns out to be nothing. Sometimes it turns out to be a problem that we were able to stop maybe before it happened, or catch up to kind of in progress or something like that. So yeah, do not be afraid to call. The last thing I want to mention about safety at home is the idea of cameras and security systems. I'm not going to spend much time on this. I'm not an expert on either one, but I think that there is value in both of them. I think there's value beyond even protecting your property. We have cameras. At my house, I don't have a security system, but I love the systems that have the cameras and some security features, and then also have like your thermostat piped into it, have your water on there. I love being able to know when I'm out of town that I get a water usage alert. Well, that's a problem, and I need a neighbor to go check it out pretty quick. So I think there's a lot of value in that. Simply putting a security system in your home and paying a monthly fee doesn't make you immune to crime. A lot of times it will just tell you after the fact, after the dust is settled, after the crime has actually occurred, that someone maybe kicked in your door, because there's a delay in the motion sensor, the magnets on your doors, the windows, that triggers a call to the call center. The call center evaluates it, tries to get a hold of you to figure out if it was a false alarm, and then contacts the police department. So it takes a while to get resources out there. This is not a magic bullet. Buy one if you want. For me, I like the feature of turning on my thermostat when I'm on the way home from the cabin and making sure my water heater isn't broken and flooding. Trying to think if there's anything more on that. Any questions on that at all? Okay. This was the point of the presentation that I was going to turn it over to my wife because this is her wheelhouse. She's a detective with the Maple Grove Police Department, and she does a bunch of stuff on scams. I'm gonna move through this really quick, but I do think that sometime maybe next fall when we start adult education up again, this would be a pretty good topic. Just spend 45 minutes or an hour on. She's got all kinds of material on being a difficult victim for scams. But I'll move through it real quick here and we'll move on to the rest of the presentation. So shop at known and trusted websites, don't give out passwords, never wire money or buy gift cards for any sort of payments. If you didn't initiate the email, the phone call, the conversation at your front door, be skeptical. If someone calls you out of the blue and starts making offers, be hesitant and be leery, be skeptical. When in doubts, contact the police department and advise them of the conversation of the whatever this individual is asking for. I'll say one more quick thing on this and then we'll move on. There's a very popular type of scam out there where it goes something like this. You get a phone call and it oftentimes is very, very believable where the caller on the other end will say something like, your loved one has been in a car crash, they're in the hospital, they're in jail, we're holding them hostage, any one of many things. And they will have done research. Oftentimes they will maybe even have a name of your loved one, a date of birth, that sort of thing, and they'll make the story very, very believable. And they will, in order to take any action on helping that individual, helping them in the hospital, bailing them out of jail, releasing them if they're holding them hostage, they need money. They need money wired to you, or you need to wire them money. They will request that you go to Target or Walmart and buy gift cards and then read them off the numbers so that they can transfer that money into their account. That is, people do it because it works. They make it so believable. They prey on kind of catching you off guard and your emotions and your concern and your love for folks in your family. Be completely skeptical of those. Never take them at face value. Call your police department. First off, try to call that individual, right? If they say your granddaughter's in jail in Ontario, try to call her and find out, and actually she's working in Woodbury, right? Take those steps, but if you have any concerns, any doubts, contact the police department. Call 911 right away.
There's the latest deal is I get all these text messages, hi, how are you doing? And they're not in my contact list.
Yeah.
What's the play there?
To establish a relationship. So they text back and forth, and it will eventually lead to conversations and an attempt to have you send them money for something. I have this building project in Dubai, and I'm a contractor, and this and that, and I need some money. And it's casting a wide net and hoping to get someone to bite, right? Yeah, Joe.
Can I say a quick word?
Yep.
So,
Mr. Social Media.
The most common scam we get in relation to church stuff is emailers trying to impersonate Pastor Mark and me. And so you will get an email and it will say from Pastor Mark Nelson or from Pastor Joe Warner, and it will not be us. The way they're able to do that is they're able to edit the name that appears to you, but then if you actually click on that person or the email itself, the email address will be stupidperson101@unknown.com. And it'll be just some completely stupid email address, and it's a scam, but it appears as if it's Pastor Mark or I asking you for gift cards or something. Can you help me out? I left my wallet back at church and I'm on a visit at a hospital. Can you send me a gift card so I can bring this person something from Target? Something like that. It's so common. You wouldn't even believe. I even get them from people claiming to be Pastor Mark. And he's in the office next to me. It's ridiculous. But it is common because it works. And we get people all the time saying, is this you? Emails to us, is this you? And that's exactly what you should do in that situation, is email us directly outside of that reply, create a new email, or call us and we'll tell you that it's not real because you're never going to ask you for money online like that, ever. So yeah, that's what we see a lot.
Yeah, I think as a rule, buy gift cards for your grandkids or whoever and give them to them like in a birthday card. You never over, online, on the phone, send numbers for gift cards. Pastor Joe doesn't take them, the IRS doesn't either. I mean, if you got a phone call that you're gonna get a warrant for your arrest because you're back due on taxes and we need green dot gift cards, that is not. There's a lot of things wrong with the IRS, but they do not do that. All right, I'm gonna move pretty quickly through some of this and so we have time for some questions maybe at the end. So how do you stay safe when you're out and about? Again, that same sort of theme. Don't be a victim, right? When you're planning to go out, plan your route. Figure out where you're gonna park. Put your valuables away before you get to your destination. And this is something that a lot of people maybe don't think about, but if you're going to the water park, or you're going to the soccer field, or you're going to the state fair or something like that, put the stuff you're not gonna carry with you away, put it in your trunk before you get there, because what people will do, people that are looking to steal valuables out of vehicles, they'll watch for people to come into the parking lot, park and move expensive computers or laptops or purses or something like that from the front and stow them in the trunk. Take care of that before you even get there. Give it some forethought and put the stuff you don't want visible up front away before you even get there. When possible, travel with a friend. That is extremely common sense, right? If you're going and meeting someplace some evening for dinner, carpool, drive together, pick each other up at your house, and then go together. Move with confidence. So suspects look for easy targets. The theme of this is not to be an easy victim, not to be an easy target. By moving with confidence, by acting like you know where you're going, know what you're doing, you portray an image of someone that is not an easy victim. My wife and I were talking about this point the other night, and I use this example when I was talking to her about it. And stick with me for a second on this. In nature, some of the biggest animals, the biggest predators out there, when they're faced with any sort of confrontation, any sort of potential fight, they posture up and get as big as they can to portray confidence, to maybe end the fight before it even begins. And what I'm thinking about, what I'm talking about in this example is like, if you think like a grizzly bear or like a big gorilla or something in the jungle, they don't need to posture up. There is nothing bigger or more dangerous than them, yet they understand that by portraying that image, by having that kind of confidence, that can psychologically put them at a distinct advantage. And you do not have to be a young, strapping man in his mid-20s that just finished up playing on a football scholarship for the Gophers to walk with confidence. Anybody in here can do that. Walk down the road with your head up high and look at people. Don't have your head in your cell phone. If you know where you're going, you plan your route and move with confidence. You portray an image of not being a victim. That will deter people from trying to make you into a victim. Stay alert, be situationally aware, and trust your instincts. You've seen that on the last couple slides, and I can't stress it enough. I hit on it a bunch. I'm not going to mention it a bunch here, but if you see something that doesn't feel right, it's because it isn't right. Trust it. Okay, the last couple things I'm going to hit on before we're out of time is 3 different things that are typical measures to maybe make you feel safe or increase your personal safety out there. The first is self-defense classes. And I will neither endorse them or disparage them. I think that if you find a good class, you go to it, it gives you more confidence, it gives you, it helps you be situationally aware, go for it. I think there's an awful lot of people out there that are looking to get paid to teach you super complicated moves based on jujitsu that if you try them one time in class, you will never be able to replicate them. So what I would suggest, if you are looking to do a self-defense class, I would do some research, and I would have the class be very much based in decision-making, evaluating threats, and like some of the stuff we just talked about, moving with confidence. Rather than, okay, to do the Kimura, I need to like go under this arm and around this arm. If you do not go to a gym a lot, weekly, you're not going to be able to do those skills. They will take your money, but it's not going to be a benefit to you. Okay, a couple tools, personal defense tools. So like taser, mace, brass knuckles, whatever. The same theme here is with the self-defense stuff. If by buying this, you feel more secure, great. Understand how it works, practice it, and then work through what it looks like to use it in your head. Simply buying this and throwing it in your center console or in your purse it's not going to, if you would ever be in a situation where you need to use it, picking it up off the shelf at Target, throwing it in your center console is not going to get you to the point of being able to use that effectively. You got to practice with it. You got to get your head in a spot where, okay, this is what it looks like to use this, and spend some time with it. They too will take your money. If you put it down on the checkout line and you give them your credit card, they will sell it to you all day long. But unless you practice with it, unless you know how it works, know how to use it effectively, it's not going to be of a lot of use when you're under stress. Okay. Last but not least, let's talk about firearms. And this is, I'm not going to get into any sort of gun control anything right now. It's a lot bigger conversation. We only have a couple minutes left, and it's Mother's Day. I don't want to have anybody walk out of here and be mad. What I will talk about, though, is the idea of just going out and purchasing a firearm, purchasing a handgun specifically for personal protection. And I think it is interesting to note, I want to throw a couple numbers at you. In my notes are back on my computer. It's something like this. In 2019, in Apple Valley, permits to purchase have to go through your local city police department. So to go and buy a handgun, your police chief has to sign off on it. I had easy access to the ones in Apple Valley. I pulled the numbers from there. The numbers around the country are identical. In Apple Valley in 2019, I think there was something like roughly 300 permits issued to purchase a handgun, new permits. In 2021, it was over 1,000, so 3 times as many, right? Those 1,000 people, those purchases were driven by fear. They were afraid of what the world was tipped on its head, right? With COVID, civil unrest, riots, the whole thing. Of those 1,000 people, and I'm gonna throw something out, if anybody here was one of the people that went out and bought a handgun in 2020 driven by fear, I'm not saying it was the wrong thing to do. But if you went out and bought a handgun, or if anybody went out and bought a handgun in 2020, and that is the last time you looked at that handgun, or the last time you picked it up, or the last time you maybe took it to the range and practiced with it, or even thought about using it, that was an irresponsible purchase, right? If you are going to purchase a firearm for the purpose of using it for personal protection, similar to a self-defense class or buying a taser, you need to assume the responsibility of training with it physically, spending a bunch of time working through how to use it, when to use it, the right time to use it in your head, and do continual maintenance on that. In my position at the police department, I do all kinds of training. I've been an instructor for a long, long time. I ran our firearms program for a long time. And all the training that the SWAT team does now comes across my desk. The folks on the police department, and especially the folks on the SWAT team, they train thousands of hours. They have put tens of thousands of rounds through a live fire firearm and simunition firearms, so like paintball sort of stuff. On a regular basis, they still make mistakes. In training, hopefully that's the only place they make mistakes. But these are folks that have spent years getting their brain in a place to use a firearm, getting their physical skills up to par, thousands of reps, tens of thousands of reps, and they still make a mistake. And so, if you purchase the handgun and you carry it around with you, go through the work and be ready and prepared to use it properly. And if you're not going to do that, in my opinion, and I don't want to make anybody angry, you have no business having one. Because you are inserting a firearm into every situation you encounter, right? Everywhere you go, if you have a handgun in your purse or a handgun on your hip, there is a gun involved. At least one, right? Yours. So, something to think about, something to consider. Anything on that? In back first. Yep, go.
So you've talked a little bit about self-defense and the tasers and things. With a lot of the crimes where, like, they come up to your car, they're like going to steal your car or whatever. It's like, is your advice just like comply and like you don't know if they have a gun, you don't know if they have whatever, right? Just like give them what they want and walk away. What's your best advice for like you get into a situation like that? What do you do? Yeah,
so the question was, if you are a victim of some sort of violent crime, a robbery, they're carjacking you, they want to steal your purse, something like that. What's my advice? Yeah, you hit on it. At that point, I think be a really, really, really good witness, okay? So give them what they want, give them your car, and then your stress level is gonna be through the roof, right? It's gonna be difficult to think clearly and have a real good cognitive processing, but so spend some time thinking about it now. Okay, if I'm ever a victim of this is what I wanna do. I wanna get out of their way, but then I wanna take a good look at what they look like, what they're wearing, what direction they went, anything that I can remember about them. Spend some time thinking about that now. If it ever happens, they're a little bit more prepared. Long answer to your question, the short answer is yes. Give them what they want. I would give them what they want, especially if I'm with my family. If someone would try to steal my vehicle or rob me, take take my truck, man, I got insurance. And you know, maybe we'll catch you later, maybe we won't. Yeah. Do you have a question?
Isn't the same sort of thing really true of any of those weapons? If you bring out a weapon, whether it's mace or anything else, you're kind of escalating the confrontation, aren't you?
Yeah, that's exactly right, and that is really kind of the point of the whole conversation is if you're going to carry that, you have to have a very clear understanding of when to use it, how to use it, the repercussions of using it, so that if you pull it out, it's the right time to pull it out, and then you can use it effectively. Anything else on that stuff? Okay, I'm gonna wrap up with 2 points. One of the quotes that a sergeant, he actually works for the Egan Police Department that I've done a bunch of teaching with, uses a lot, is the idea of that your body will never go where your mind has never been, right? Your body won't go where your mind has never been. You guys heard that before? Okay, so the idea is, you know, if you were ever an athlete, or like a musical performer, or maybe even you went to a athletic event, went to a concert, that sort of thing. You see a player step to the free throw line, and you can see them visualize that shot, right? Maybe they'll even, with their hand, they're visualizing that shot. Concert pianist sits down, they're looking at their keys, they're imagining their fingers going across the keys for the first however many bars of that musical piece, right? Their mind is going where their body is soon going to be, okay? The same is true for everything that we just talked about. Spend some time thinking about what you're gonna do if you see a suspicious car down your block. How you will react if you get a phone call that says your grandson is in some Mexico prison. What are you going to do if you're approached and someone wants to take your vehicle? If you do carry some personal defense, something, work through that a bunch in your head, how to use it, okay? You're not going to respond physically if you haven't done the work first mentally. And the last thing that I'm going to hit on. So in my position now, I've mentioned that I supervise the school resource officers. We, on a 3-year cycle, we hit every school in the Apple Valley, Egan, Rosemont School District doing training for hostile events, like run, hide, fight sort of training, active shooter training for the teachers. It's staff only when we're there. And I have been in all kinds of classrooms where it's, you know, preschool, kindergarten, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, the teachers are sitting there and we're going through this, and that's a heavy topic to talk to teachers about. And they didn't sign up for that. When they decided to be a teacher, they didn't sign up for figuring out what to do if someone is in the hallway with a gun, right? That was not why they went down that career path. And so the looks on their faces, like I said, it's a heavy topic, it's a hard day. And so I end my talks with them the same way I'll end it with you. So there's evil in the world, right? To ignore it would be foolish. It'd be irresponsible for us not to consider that there's bad people out there. The crime rate is up, there's evil people out there. So what do? You do what we're doing right now. You spend some time talking about it. You think about it, you prepare for it. You take one more lap around your house to make sure the garage door and the outside lights are working at night. You travel with a friend to dinner. Maybe you do a self-defense class or that sort of thing. And then you move on with your life. You move on with your everyday life. You go and you book a tea time, or you buy tickets to the Orpheum, and with another couple, you do dinner and a show, and you catch a show. To ignore the evil would be irresponsible, so you pay a little attention to it, you prepare for it, and then you move on. Because it can't drive you. It can't drive your life. All right. I will answer any questions you have. Otherwise, happy Mother's Day again. Enjoy the rest of the hopefully not so rainy Sunday afternoon. So.